The message is very simply whatever it is in your life that you want to change and that you want to improve, you have the ability to do it. You have the ability to do it in probably a shorter period of time than you think, and you are never, ever, ever too far gone to stop. Or to start, because there were so many issues that I had structurally and metabolically and my weight and all of that. And the reality is, and I mean this from my core when I say this, everyone says this, it's so cliche. This is not a cliche when I say it. It is a literal fact. If I can do this, anyone can do it. Like literally anyone can do it because I started from, probably the worst possible place. At my heaviest, 440 wasn't even my heaviest. My heaviest, I was 484. I was almost 500 pounds. And so to be able to come from that and now, be down 147 pounds, I weigh 293 pounds now. All of my labs are in normal range and not even normal range because normal range is annoying. Optimal range, like, better than anybody, right in
Yeah.
the middle, right? Like
We want
maximizing.
optimal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, optimal places and all those, and I
Mhm.
just can't. I'm just so excited. I used to think about death a lot. I talk about it in the book. I used to pray that God would let me live to be 58 years old, because at 58, both of my kids would have graduated high school. Like I just
Mhm.
wanted to barely make it through their childhood. If I could just be blessed enough to do that, it would be enough. And the reality is, what kind of father prays to live to be 58? Like, oh, I should be praying to live to 98. And so now I used to think so much about death, and now all I think about is life. I'm just so busy living. When Morgan Freeman says you got to get busy living or get busy dying, I'm just too busy living to even think about dying. So to anybody that wants to change any aspect of their life, I'm here to be a testimonial and say it is possible, it is worth it, and the best time to do it is right now.
It's never too late to start, to just take that first step and do, something. You're like you said, you're not too far gone. Anybody can do it at any time.
Welcome back to PCOS Unfiltered, where we go beyond the diagnosis and talk about what it really takes to reclaim your health, your energy, and your life. Today's episode is such a powerful conversation because it's about so much more than weight loss. It's about wake-up calls, identity shifts, healing from the inside out, and what can happen when someone finally decides that they are not done yet. My guest today is Chris Garrido, and his story is one that I know will resonate with so many people. After years of living in a body that felt limiting, exhausting, and unsustainable, Chris reached a breaking point following the loss of his father. At nearly 50 years old and over 400 pounds, he realized that if something didn't change, he was headed down a path that would cost him not only his health, but precious time with his wife and sons. What followed was not an overnight transformation or some quick fix. It was a decision, then another, then another. Through nutrition, medical support, strength training, mindset shifts, and a willingness to stay in the process even when it was hard, Chris completely changed the trajectory of his life. In this episode, we talk about the emotional wake-up call that started it all, the reality of living in a body that no longer allowed him to fully show up for his family, the role of lab work, GLP-1 support, hormones, strength training, and why real transformation is about so much more than the number on a scale. We also talk about discipline, momentum, identity, and the ripple effect that happens when one person chooses to change. This is an incredibly honest, motivating, and hopeful conversation for anyone who has ever thought they were too far gone, too stuck, or too late to begin again. As a reminder, the content shared on PCOS Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests are not intended to serve as medical advice. As always, consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or treatment plan. The information shared is based on personal experience and expert interviews and is not a substitute for professional medical guidance. So let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Chris Garrido.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to Chris. Um, I've known Chris for a little while. When you think about it, right? It's kind of crazy. Uh, we used to see a little bit more of each other years
Mhm.
ago, but I started following his story, which we're going to get into on Facebook, which has been a year and a half, going on 2 years, right? What was that?
Right about a year and a half.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I thought. Um, So yeah, let's just start by diving into that. So tell us, why you're here, and tell us about your story and where you were and kind of what really prompted you to make these changes.
That's a lot. I could fill up an hour just going through that. But where I'll break it down into segments. So where I was, just chronically obese, morbidly obese, and probably mortally obese, if we're being honest. I had been overweight my entire life, just through a lot of different factors. I didn't grow up knowing how to eat healthy. I grew up with very little financial resources, so we kind of just ate what was available, what was cheap, what was quick, and what decades of doing that will do, unfortunately. And into adulthood, I think I experienced a lot of what everyone else experienced, where I became a husband, I became a father, I started a business, and life gets in the way. And we all have the best intentions of getting healthier and prolonging our lives and improving the quality of that life. But there's always something else to do, or there's always something else or someone else to focus on. And so, in March of 2024. So again, just almost 2 years ago, I just had a real wake up call. My dad died at the age of 70. He had cancer, and it moved very, very quickly. We didn't get the cancer diagnosed until December of 23, and on March 10th of 24, he passed away. So 3 months, and it went very, very quickly. At that time, the time of his passing, it was 3 days before my 49th birthday. I was 440 pounds, and really had not just been overweight, but had been really, really unhealthy, and didn't have much of a quality of life to speak of. Now, I don't want to misconvey that. I had a business that I was very proud of. I have a wife that I love tremendously. I had two sons that I adore. I had a beautiful life on the outside looking in, but on the inside looking out, the piece that not a lot of people got to see was I was just so limited in what I could do. I couldn't stand for longer than 30 seconds without having back and hip pain. Couldn't walk really 100 feet without having to stop or become winded. And so a lot of the things that we started to do as a family were more sedentary activities. We would go to a movie because you can sit at a movie. We would go out to eat because you can sit when you go out to eat. We wouldn't do a lot of things that required walking or standing for long periods of time. And so that was one of the things that I realized now looking back is being unhealthy is a vicious, vicious cycle, because your sedentary life makes you more unhealthy, and your being unhealthy makes you have a more sedentary life. And, the wheel just keeps spinning round and round. March 10th, 2024 was a wake up call for me because when my dad died, I got to see firsthand how that impacted my kids. And they were devastated, as I'm sure you can imagine. Losing their grandfather, especially when he, really had did not have a lot of time of being sick. It happened very quickly. And so I just kept asking myself this question, if it's this difficult for them, to lose their grandfather, like how hard is it going to be to lose their dad? And the reality is that's the path I was headed on. I mean, you don't know a lot of, 440-pound people that live into their 50s and 60s. And
Mhm.
so I had always kind of told myself, I want to get fit by 50. And that was a cute little mantra, but for decades, it never moved the needle. It didn't cause me to eat any better. It didn't cause me to go to the gym. It didn't cause me to take any real intentional change. And so that was the wake up call. And, that it took me several months because I still had to process the grief of losing my dad. I had to deal with a lot of just really red tape around his estate and all the things that you have to do when someone dies. And it was very, very hard. But I started the movement. I started the wheels in motion, at that time. And we were on a trip that summer in July of 2024. Again, I was still 440 pounds. We were in Birmingham, Alabama, because my oldest son had a baseball tournament there. And Birmingham is like one of the barbecue meccas of the world. And so I just was into my same old habits, hitting all the barbecue spots and eating all the unhealthy food. And my son had a day where they didn't have a game. And so the kids wanted to go to the Birmingham Zoo. And I told my wife, I said, I can't go to the zoo. That's too much standing, too much walking. Dad can't do that. And I think everybody knew. And my kids probably were like, if I look back on it, they were probably like, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if we went to the zoo? But they knew we couldn't go to the zoo, and it was because of me, right? And that's not, no father wants to be the reason why your kids don't get to go to the zoo or experience any other pleasures in life. And so my wife took them to the zoo, and I remember sitting at the hotel room in Birmingham, Alabama, by myself, and my wife was texting me pictures of the kids at the zoo having a good time. And I think all of this really had just started to compound, just decades of being overweight and unhealthy, being in pain all the time, having a lack of mobility, and really just a lack of an ability to be a present father and a present husband, and be the version of myself that I wanted to be. And so that was really kind of it for me. I said, when we get back from this trip, I'm going to make some significant changes. And so, you asked me kind of a big question, where was I, the journey, all of that. I kind of gave you like the prequel. The prequel is how did I get to where I was? And then really the journey began at the end of July 2024, where I just said, hey, I've got to make some serious changes here. And I'm so incredibly happy that I did. And honestly, I never could have imagined that I would have had the kind of results that I've had in 18 months. Where I am today, and candidly, where I was 6 months ago, was kind
Mhm.
of astonishing to me. I really couldn't believe. I tell people all the time, you can change your entire life in 12 months. You can literally change the whole trajectory of your life in a very short amount of time. And so, um, I'll stop and kind of let you lead the conversation with some questions. But that's the backstory, though. That's how I kind of ended up, on my 49th birthday, grieving the loss of my dad at over 400 pounds, and really just incredibly unhealthy, and on my way to an early death, candidly.
Yeah. I mean, and you said something important there about changing your life in 12 months, because I think there's a lot of people out there, hopefully if they're regular listeners of the show, they're understanding that it's a long game. You are truly, it's a marathon here. It does not happen overnight, at least not in the way that you probably more than likely want, and that you want it to stick. Um, so yeah, kind of take us into the next step. So you made the decision. You said you knew something needed to change. You were going to get back from Birmingham, and then kind of what happened next.
So, as fate would have it, right about the time that I'm having all of these thoughts, I was on Facebook, and I saw a post, and it was my old neighbor, and she had lost a ton of weight. I mean, she looked incredible, and I showed my wife. I'm like, look at Jen, like this is incredible. And so, I think in the back of my mind, it was kind of like, okay, I'm seeing this for a reason, right? Like I didn't just go through all of this, mindset shift to finally commit to doing something systematically and intentionally to get better. And then just, stumble on this post by happenstance. I believe that there was a reason for it. And so I started reading it, and she was always a great friend and a great neighbor, and somebody that I could be very, vulnerable with. There was never any judgment with her. I mean, she walked a similar walk to what I had walked. And so I also knew that she was a nurse practitioner, but I didn't really know much about her practice. I thought it was like aesthetics and Botox and stuff like that, which I didn't really need. But I just reached out to her, and I said, hey, when I get back in town, can I talk to you and just kind of get an idea of what's going on, and tell you a little bit more about where I'm at? And she was great. She was just such a tremendous resource for me. And so we talked, and she told me a little bit about her journey. She was always careful to say, my journey won't be your journey. Like everybody's different.
Mhm.
There is no one cookie cutter way to do this. But she said the one thing that I do believe that needs to happen every time in the beginning is we need to start with lab work. And so she convinced me to go get my labs done. And I told it was funny. I remember saying, I was like, hey, I just got done on like a barbecue tour of Birmingham right now. Like, do you think we should maybe wait a little bit, and I should, like, eat healthy for a while before I go get my labs done? And I'll never forget the term that she used. She goes, no, she goes, let's get the dirty labs. And I always thought the term dirty labs was so funny. But she said, let's get the dirty labs. And that way we've got like a really good starting point. I'm like, oh, great. And so I got my labs done, and she said, when I get the results, I'll reach out and we'll go over them, and we'll, see what we can do. And so I got a text message from her. It was on a Sunday too. I was like, oh my gosh, my nurse practitioner has my blood work and is texting me on a Sunday. This can't be good. And she just texted me two words. She said, it's time. And That was it. I knew exactly what that meant. And to me, for the first time in my life, I think I felt like, you know what? It is time. I think it was just really, it had hit home for me that, I don't think that I was down, depressed, frustrated, sad, like I had been in the before. Like before, if I had gotten lab work done and then the results came in and they were bad, I'd just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna be able to do anything. This was the first time that I think there was a little mixture of hope there, and it was because I knew that I had really like shifted my brain. Like this was it. One way or another, this was it. I was either going to get healthier or I was going to get gone, one way or another. And so the reality is I chose the former, and I would choose it every time. Now would I stick with it? Would I have consistent results? Like I've done all this before, but something felt different this time. And so I went in and I met with her, and she kind of walked me through what she had done, which was really primarily focused on nutrition, and then some metabolic stuff, and candidly a GLP-1. And we can talk. I
Mm,
talk very
yeah.
openly about GLP-1 medication. I'm not really sure where the stigma is or where the shame is, but the reality is she said, look, it will help you. It will not solve the problem for you, but it will help you. And so, I laugh at these people now. All your listeners, I'll fast forward. I'll give you the shortcut here. I've lost 147 pounds in 18 months. There's the shortcut. We were going to get to that anyway, guys.
Yes.
But no, I laugh. People like, oh, well, you were on Manjaro, so that's how you did it. 147 pounds, really? I mean, I added 33 pounds of muscle in the last 18 months. Manjaro makes you lose fat and muscle. So the idea that I was strength training and building muscle while simultaneously burning fat, Manjaro didn't do that. It helped. But why
Mm.
why why stigma around legitimate medical tools? Like I don't know. I've never looked at a house and then gone to the carpenter and said, "Oh, but you used a hammer." I mean, that's that takes away from the home because you used a hammer. Like that's ridiculous. And so that's I laugh. I'm on a lot of on Instagram. I follow a lot of people that have had really really dramatic weight loss transformations, and if they use a GLP-1, they just get blasted for it online. And I'm like, gosh, this is just insane. But we can talk about that. But so really, the chapter one of this was just going to be nutrition, GLP-1, and really just taking it from a dietary standpoint. And that's how I started. And then chapter two, I didn't know was going to happen, and it happened shortly thereafter. But my son, my oldest son, who's he's a big, strong, young athlete, and so he was training in a gym in Clearwater, gym that was owned by a mutual friend of ours, Richard Fika. It's Legacy Barbell in Clearwater, Florida, and I was just in there because he was training, and he's not old enough to drive, so I had to drive him, and so I'm sitting on the couch doing some work on my phone, and the lead trainer, the general manager at the time, I kind of stammer because he now owns the gym. He's since bought the gym, but at the time he didn't own it. But he came up to me and just said, "Hey Chris, you want to get a lift in?" And I was like, no, I didn't come here to lift weights. I came here to bring my son to lift weights. And he asked me again, 5-word question. These questions just continue to resonate with me. They burned away in my brain and they'll never go away. What would it be like if my boys lost their dad? When Jennifer said it's time, I'll never forget those 2 words. And he asked me a 5-word question. He said, "What are you waiting for?" And I said, well, I have a lot of reasons. And, in my mind, that should have ended the conversation. But I didn't know Matt well enough. And Matt Levine is audacious and doesn't really take no for an answer. And so he said, oh, well, that's good. And pulled up a chair and sat down. He said, because I've got a bunch of time. Let's talk about all your reasons. And I was like, who does this guy think he is? No, I don't want to work out, And so in my brain, my reasons were I'm over 400 pounds. I haven't been in a gym in 15 years. I can barely move. What could I even do in here? And I think a little bit about Legacy Barbell too. Like this is like
Mhm.
a powerlifting gym. I mean, this is not, like a big box gym where I can go in and get on like some Nautilus equipment. It's there's some serious, like some of the strongest people in the world train there. And I'm like, I don't
Mhm.
I don't belong here. And so he talked to me for almost an hour and just kind of walked me through like, look, this everything starts somewhere. The idea that you have to get healthier to come to the gym is ridiculous. right? Like this is where you get healthier. And he's right. In my brain, I was like, well, if I could lose like 60 or 70 pounds, then maybe I could start, working out and adding in some strength training and stuff like that. And so through his not so gentle encouragement, I found myself in the gym Monday morning, August 10th, 2024, 7:30 a.m. Didn't want to be there. I was miserable. I actually, I half jokingly, and I'm only half joking when I say this, when I was driving to the gym that morning, I was literally thinking like of every way that I could get out of it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, maybe I could just tell him I got pulled over, and I was like, no, because he's just going to wait for me. He's going to still want me to come. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I could say I got in a car accident. Like, me in a car accident, you're not going to go to the gym right after a car accident. And then I remember for one split second, I had this thought. I'm serious about this. This is how bad it was. I thought, well, maybe if I really get in a car accident, if I really get in a car accident, then I won't have to go do this. That's how much I was dreading going to the gym. And it's a funny story, but I think it's important for people to understand that I'm not different. I'm not some guy that was like chomping at the bit, like I'm going to go reclaim my life. No, I was scared. I was
Hmm.
petrified. I was full of shame. The last thing I wanted to do was go work out in a gym with other people and probably fall on my face. It was going to be humiliating, and I knew it, and it was going to be hard, and I was afraid of that. And so, I did not get in a car accident. I chose to just go show up to the gym. The fact that it was 7:30 in the morning, by the way, was my choice too. But to this day, I hate training in the morning, but I wanted 7:30 a.m. because in my mind there would be fewer people there. And so there would be
Uh,
fewer people to see me, and I would deal with that embarrassment and shame better in a smaller environment. And so that was my first workout, and we looking back, we did next to nothing, and somehow I felt like I was going to die. I pushed an empty sled about 30 yards up the turf and back 4 times. I did my own body weight squats to a gigantically high box, like a 24-inch box. So we're really talking about the equivalent of sitting down in a chair and standing up. I mean, this is not,
mhm.
anything tremendous, from a workout standpoint. And then I think I did some incline dumbbell press with 15-pound dumbbells. And that was the entire workout. It was 30 minutes. And like I could probably do that now in 2 minutes and do it as a warm up to a workout. But back then, I'll never forget how I felt. I felt like somebody had dragged me out into deep water, and I was just like vigorously trying to tread water. I was like, when is this going to end? What's he going to have me do next? Like all the same fears that I'm sure a lot of your listeners deal with when we go, try and take really strong action for change. Change is never easy. It always comes outside of your comfort zone. And I couldn't have been more outside of my comfort zone. I was hurting. I was panting. My lungs were burning from breathing so hard. I remember I failed to mention this part. The turf that I was pushing the sled on was in the back of the gym. And I remember walking from the front of the gym to the back of the gym. When I got back there, I had to sit down. I had to take a break because I
Wow.
was already out of breath. Like that's how bad, my conditioning was at that time. And I remember I was acting like I was tying my shoe, hoping that Matt wouldn't realize that I needed a break already. I mean, there's no way he didn't realize it. Actually, I think I was wearing like slip-on shoes too. So I was acting like I was tying shoes that don't even tie, which is ridiculous. But that's how out of it I was. But that was really a major step. I thought I was just going to do what a lot of people I think do, just take a GLP-1 and change my diet and just lose as much weight as I could. And then once I dropped the weight, then start to incorporate some strength training. And Matt had other ideas. And so 2 days a week in the gym turned to 3 days a week in the gym, turned to 4 days a week in the gym. Through the gym, I met some incredible people, including another nurse practitioner that really wanted to look at me from an HRT standpoint. And so we did some more testing, some more lab work, and I found out that at 49 years old, my testosterone was 154. She said it was the lowest she'd seen in 20 years. And that's horrendous for a 49-year-old man. I mean, if I was 80, then maybe. But for a 49-year-old man to have a testosterone that low, it's a no wonder that I didn't ever have any energy. It's a no wonder I always had,
Exactly.
mood swings. No wonder I couldn't, work out or exercise. And
Mhm.
so, met her and she helped me tremendously. And I do TRT again, no shame in it, right? Like I think everybody should have their hormone levels at the right place. I'm not sure why there's any stigma around that.
Mhm.
But again, she got me started, and so I'll just tell you that I think within 6 months of training in the gym, I had lost. That would have been February. I probably lost about 75 pounds in 6 months. But more importantly, though, my A1C when I first started was a 9.9. So I was full-blown type 2 diabetic, which is why Jennifer sent me the text, said it's time. My cholesterol was a 225. Within 6 months, all of that had been corrected. My A1C was down in the fives. I was no longer even pre-diabetic by that standard. My cholesterol was down around 150, a much more normal range. Um, and I was just feeling better. And so I said earlier, like you can change your whole life, in 12 months. In 6 months, I had already made tremendous change.
Mhm.
And so I think that was really important. And one thing that I would mention too is how a lot of people ask me like, how did you get through the really difficult parts? Why didn't you quit? And it's a great question because throughout my entire life, I've lost weight and I've quit. Lose it, gain it back, lose it, gain it back, the yo-yo diets and all that. And I would say that two things happened this time that never really happened before. One would be I actually got the inside of my body functioning properly, getting my hormone levels right and actually having my body be receptive of the things that I was doing to it is a huge part of it. And secondarily, the strength training. I hadn't been in a gym in 15 years. And so, to me, like going to the gym is hard. But from a body composition standpoint, the more muscle I built, the better I burned fat, the better I felt, the better I functioned. Like all of those things were really important. And then also just from a mindset standpoint, there's something that's really important about reminding yourself that you can do hard things. That's something that I had forgotten along the way. I just had become this shell of myself that, my wife would do things for me. And, it's funny now. Now I'll go to do something. She'll be like, no, don't do that. I'm like, why? And she's like, oh, I forget you can do everything now. Like that's a real comment that she's made on
Yeah.
multiple occasions. And so, but yeah, and then the other thing that I would say happened too is, when people ask me, how did I not quit? I just told myself that for 90 days I wouldn't quit. It was an arbitrary number that I picked, but I said, no matter how miserable this gets, I will stick with it for 90 days. And if on day 91 I still want to quit, then I will. And so the first 30 days were hell and I was miserable. I mean, I can't overstate that. I was miserable. The next 30 days, kind of tolerated it. It wasn't miserable. I didn't love it. I didn't want to be in the gym, but it was more tolerable. And then I would say by the time I hit the 90-day mark, I was good. I mean, I'd lost significant weight. I could see the changes. I could feel the changes, and it would have taken a lot for somebody to get me to quit at that time. And so, talking with people now that are kind of behavioral scientists, I didn't know this, but like there's real science behind 90 days. Complete dumb luck for me. I don't even know why 90 days came in my head, but that's the number I picked. And
Mhm.
turns out there's science behind it. If you do something for 90 days, you're likely to stick with it. And so 90 days was an arbitrary number for me, but I'm glad I picked it. And by day 91, you couldn't pull me out of the gym. I was
Yeah.
completely hooked at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, too, like you were talking about, like, behavioral reasons behind things. It's as I'm learning too, usually there's like a couple of reasons people make change, and it's either to get away from pain, or to go towards a pleasure. And unfortunately, a lot of us, it takes that pain point, that breaking point to finally make the change instead of along the way when you're thinking, okay, yeah, maybe I should. And you start making a change and you feel better and then you want to keep going, right? No, it takes that severe, breaking point a lot of the times before we really make those changes and decide to actually stick with those changes. Um, Going back to, I think it's an important conversation. Going back to what you were saying, about the GLP-1s and the stigma along that, um, because I haven't talked a whole lot about that, or I haven't had even guests on that, that have had experience with it. And I think it's super important. And you could, somebody listening might say, well, he's a guy, but I think it's no
Mhm.
matter, guy, girl, whatever it is. Um, you did it the right way. I think that's where some of the stigma, I think does come in because First of all, yes, you can see some of, especially celebrities and stuff that are using it that don't need to lose any more weight, right? And I think that's one thing, or maybe they do, but that's what they're solely relying on. But you did the right way, especially even first with the nutrition piece. Like I think that's super important. And then you, of course, did even better by adding in the strength training piece to that.
I think you're right about the stigma coming from that. There's a lot of people that do use it as a cheat code, and then
Hmm.
the people that A genuinely needed it, and then B used it the right way, end up paying the price for those people that,
Hmm.
I'm just gonna get a prescription for Ozempic so I can lose this last 10 pounds, or I get that, right? Like that's silly to me. But when you're talking about somebody that is 440 pounds and diabetic, I mean, I'm who Manjaro was made for. Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no cheating, there's no shortcut. Like it's a diabetic medication, and
Mhm.
I needed something that was going to get my blood sugar right. I needed something that was going to help me, metabolize food better and regulate that process better. And so I don't like the stigma doesn't bother me. I feel bad for the people that I see on social media and the way that they get viciously attacked for it. For me personally, like, you can say whatever you want to say about me. Like I really don't care. Like I'm living my best life. I feel great. I know exactly what's in my body. I know my body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do for the first time really in 20 plus years.
Mhm.
The way that I feel is, it's enough for me, regardless of what anybody thinks about how I got here. But I'll say this though. One thing that I'm really really grateful for is I'm so glad that Matt did get me in the gym, and he didn't know I was taking a GLP-1. He didn't find that out until probably like a week or two into training. And when he found that out, the first thing he said was, I'm glad we're doing this. You need this because, and he
Mhm.
walked me through it. He said, you'll lose weight, but you will lose muscle. He's like, you'll lose
Exactly.
muscle, you'll lose bone density, you'll lose all of it. He's like, and so the reality is there's a right way to do this. Let's strength train. And so really there was three parts of it for me. There's the GLP-1, there's the nutrition, and there's the exercise. And so the
Yeah.
fact that I was doing all three of those simultaneously right out of the gate, I think is a huge reason why I had such great results, but also why I continue to today. I'm still losing weight. I'm still adding muscle. I do an in-body scan once a month just so I can see my body comp. And my last in-body scan, my body fat percentage went down, my weight went down, and my skeletal muscle mass went up. Like we're still moving in the right direction. This has become a mantra for me, this three-word mantra, not done yet. I am not done yet. And I've come to realize, and this is a huge mindset shift for me, I'll never be done. We always, I think when we have these really short-term goals or even medium or long-term goals, but they're these finite goals, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because you're telling yourself, when I get to this point, I'm going to stop. And the reality is, we can never stop. I can't get to my goal weight, which, by the way, I don't have one, but I can't get to my goal weight and then go, okay, I'm done going to the gym now. I did it. Pat myself on the back. Congratulations. Like, this is
Exactly.
forever for me. And that might sound daunting to some people that aren't already in the journey, but I promise you, once you get in the journey, it's not daunting. It's liberating. It's freeing. Like for me, even in my life outside of health and wellness, I now know that every time I accomplish something, I'm just going to raise the bar a little more. I'm going to dangle some new goal out in front of me that I now want to accomplish. And so
Mhm.
that's why that mantra, not done yet, is so big to me. And I mean, so much my wife had not done yet t-shirts made. I wear them all the time. Like, because it's a mindset shift. And so there's a great book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game, and he talks about the difference between finite games and infinite games. Life is an infinite game. It is not a finite game. Like a finite game is a game where there's a clock running and there's a score, and at the end of it, you either win or you lose. The infinite game is not about winning and losing. It's about surviving so that you can continue to
Mhm.
play for as long as humanly possible. That's the game that we're all playing in life, and that
Yeah.
that really opened up my mind from a health and wellness standpoint of like, okay, this, and you hear this all the time, like, well, it's a lifestyle change. It's true, but even lifestyle change, I think, seems a little bit nearsighted and limited because to me, I could have a lifestyle change, get to where I want, and then change right back. It's not a lifestyle change. It's none of that. It is, I am not done yet. I will never be done. in health and wellness, in my business, in all of that. And so I speak differently now. You probably know that. We've known each other for almost 10 years. Like, I didn't speak with this kind of confidence or authority before. I kind of just,
Yeah.
squirreled away a little bit because I wasn't proud of myself. I didn't have something to be that confident about.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of PCOS Unfiltered. I hope Chris's story reminded you of something really important. It is never too late to take the first step. No matter how stuck you feel, no matter how long you've been struggling, and no matter how far gone you think you are, change is still possible. One of the biggest takeaways from this conversation is that transformation doesn't require perfection. It just requires a decision to begin, and then the willingness to keep going. One step, one choice, 1% better at a time. I also love the reminder that healing is never just about one outcome. When you start improving your health, it spills into everything. Your confidence, your energy, your relationships, your presence, your purpose, and the way you show up in your life. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, take a screenshot and tag us on social media, or leave a review so more people can find this conversation and realize that their story is not over yet. You can connect with Chris on Instagram at fit_50, and his book, Fit by 50, My Year-Long Journey from Death to Life, is available on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. I'll make sure all of that is linked in the show notes for you. All right, I'm sending you so much love, and I'll see you on the next episode of PCOS Unfiltered. Nourish, heal, thrive.